approval, and I mentioned upstairs that we will be taking the March 16th, 2017 minutes off the agenda for today. So I am now looking for approval of the April 6th, 2017 meeting minutes.
I will second.
Moved by Board Member Dowd, seconded by Board Member Watts. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 approvals on those minutes. No abstentions and no disagreements. Okay. I'm now looking for approval of the April 20th, 2017 regular meeting minutes.
I'll move approval of April 20th, 2017 minutes.
A second.
Moved by Board Member Watts, seconded by Board Member Badenford. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And it's moved unanimously. All right, now we're at staff briefings, item 5.1, quarterly capital improvement program projects update.
Good afternoon, members of the BPU. I'm Dave Montague, supervising engineer of Team 4. Be presenting the quarterly update as soon as I get the PowerPoint up.
Just want to see if that's working.
gonna look like I know what I'm doing, right? Did it start working at all?
I'm not sure why.
Did you try down?
Do you want me to? Where is it? Just watch out for the cord tape.
I think I might have moved it ahead.
So we just click the up arrow or something to move it, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, that's all the time we have. Um, Good afternoon. Once again, I'm Dave Montague, Supervisor of Team 4. Be presenting the quarterly update. Okay, so the presentation is going to cover an expenditure summary, talk about major project updates, upcoming attractions, and a brief review of the city's website. So this pie chart shows the separation of the expenditures by different categories of infrastructure for the third quarter of fiscal year 16-17. These are the water projects, not all of the projects that we're doing in CIP. So the dollar amounts aren't extremely high during this quarter. During the winter, there wasn't a lot of construction, so these are a lot of projects and small charges to a lot of different projects primarily. So the major project update, we completed the Alderbrook, Rosedale, Macklin, Talbot Sewer and Water Improvement Project. That was basically 4 residential blocks parallel to each other between Sonoma and Montgomery. That was a $2 million project. The second project is the Mohawk Street Lift Station. All these projects were completed by my team, CIP Team 4. That was a $1.4 million project. We also completed the Cleveland Avenue Sewer and Water Main Improvement Project. The construction cost of that was $1.2 million. We completed a Fountain Grove Parkway sewer main upsize for high fire severity zone. That was a $252,000 project. We completed construction of the neighborhood streets slurry seal. That was not a water project. That is a public works project. That was almost a $600,000 slurry seal project. Upcoming attractions, the downtown Santa Rosa streetscape project is happening right now. You might have noticed under the plaza on 3rd Street where you dip down into the plaza, we're installing new lighting to get rid of that dark tunnel appearance, and also some pedestrian enhancements on the north side to encourage pedestrian use of that corridor. That's about a $650,000 project being constructed by Argonaut. That project also includes a traffic signal at Mill Street and Santa Rosa Avenue. The project that will be going to City Council for approval or award, because we opened bids last week, is the Neighborhood Streets Initiative and Roseland Street Overlay. That's approximately a $2.5 million street maintenance project, basically. Another project my team is working on is the Jennings Avenue rail crossing. That is expected to be about a $400,000 project. We're splitting the scope of that work with SMART. They're going to do the portion of the project within their right-of-way, and then we're doing the parts on our side that will enable pedestrians to cross the tracks at that location, which has traditionally been used but not a approved crossing. Another project my team is working on is a Fulton Road widening project that is primarily funded by Measure M. We're just about halfway through the environmental approval of that project and be moving on to design in the late fall. That project also includes Rule 20A PG&E undergrounding of all the overhead utilities along that corridor. We're also working on the Hearn Avenue at Highway 101, rebuilding that interchange, rebuilding the bridge that's doesn't have the current standard clearance, nor wide enough for pedestrians and the volume of traffic. That project, we're just entering the design phase. We completed environmental a few months ago, and we'll be going to City Council for approval of that design contract. And working on funding that project. It's about, it's going to be about a $20 million project. Hope to start construction in 2019. And the final project that we're reporting on is the Highway 101 bike and pedestrian overcrossing that we're working on. We hope to be construction of that in 2020. And we're just entering the environmental phase of that right now. And this is Team 4. These are the folks moving all these projects through. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Montague, for all the work that you do and for bringing us Team 4's suite of projects. Are there any board member questions? Board Member Dowd?
Could you describe the Fulton Road widening? Is that going to go to 2 lanes in each direction? Is that the plan?
Yes, that's going to be 2 lanes in each direction, a median island, some traffic signal improvements. We'll be stubbing out some utilities for future improvements where we can identify those, and the underground utility work. Reconstructing the whole street from Piner to Guerneville. It's about a mile. There'll be some right-of-way acquisition. There's a couple of creek crossings, large diameter pipes that we'll be replacing, and working in creeks and permitting, and it gets pretty involved in that. Does that answer?
That's a difficult stretch because of Piner High School's location in that reach, and so that will be a coordination hurdle to get over.
Yes, we are in touch with the principal, and he knows what's going on.
And then my other question, if I could, is where's the location of the bicycle overcrossing? Is that near the JC?
We have a pretty good idea of we went through the feasibility study and a preliminary document with Caltrans and identified a location from Elliott to Edwards. There's some difficulties with that, with right-of-way and with the Dick's Sporting Goods now that's there. And we think there's a better solution. So we're going to be looking at that through this next environmental process.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So moving on to the consent items, we have 1 item for approval.
I will move approval of to recommend the Water Department, City Council adding a 2-year limited term customer service representative.
Excuse me, Chair Khan, would you like to invite public comment before there's a vote?
Sure, of course. I would be very happy to invite public comment on the consent item 6.1. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak? Seeing no one rise, I will move forward again to get a movement on this report item or consent item.
I will recommend that we move forward the consent item for a 2-year limited term customer service representative, fiscal year 2017-18.
A second. Moved by Board Member Watts, seconded by Board Member Badenford. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And that passes unanimously. We have a water supply update.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Cowan and members of the board. I'm here to give the water supply update. So for Lake Mendocino, currently Lake Mendocino is at 97,153 acre feet, which is 113.3% of the target water supply curve, and the 24-hour average release is 95 cubic feet per second. And that reservoir has turned operations back over to the Sonoma County Water Agency, so they're now operating that reservoir. Still looking in very good shape, so really been a great benefit from the rains we had this year. In terms of Lake Pillsbury, Lake Pillsbury is at 72,905 acre feet, which is 97.2% of the current water supply capacity. And the 24-hour average release is 707 cubic feet per second. And the Potter Valley project diversion is 44 cubic feet per second. Lake Sonoma, currently Lake Sonoma is at 252,586 acre feet, which is 103.1% of the water supply pool. Currently, the 24-hour average release is 251 cubic feet per second. My understanding is Lake Sonoma is still being operated by the Army Corps of Engineers, and there's still quite a bit of water in the system that's still coming into the lake. Wanted to give the board an update on the governor's executive order. There was an email that was sent right after it was issued, but I wanted to give the board just a little more detail on what's going on related to the executive order related to the drought. So the governor did release an executive order on April 7th that terminated the emergency drought in the majority of California. It still kept drought conditions in 4 counties down in sort of the southern Central Valley areas. As part of that, okay, technology problems today. As part of that rescission of the drought, there are a few things that the governor did direct his state agencies to continue. So one is that he is directing that the State Water Board continue to get monthly reporting from all of the water agencies throughout the state. So we will need to continue reporting our monthly water use data, as well as a number of other things that go along with that reporting. So we'll continue to do that for once a month. And then he also directed that the water waste prohibitions stay in effect right now. And so just some examples of those prohibitions are you can't wash a car without using an automatic hose nozzle. You must have fountains that are recirculating, so you can't operate any non-recirculating fountains. You know, you're not supposed to irrigate within 48 hours of effective rainfall, things of that nature. So those prohibitions are still in effect statewide and apply to all citizens of California. And then he did direct his state agencies, both the State Water Board and the Department of Water Resources, to continue to work on developing a new water use target for all water agencies that have to comply with the Urban Water Management Planning Act. We are one of those agencies that has to comply because we serve over 3,000 customers or over 3,000 acre feet per year, so that's the parameter. To continue to work on ideas and possible programs for making sure that water systems minimize leaks. And then really to look at the drought and lessons learned from the drought to see if any water use efficiency recommendations should come from that. So that was all in the executive order. In addition to the executive order that was recently released, I believe it was that same day, the governor also did finally finalize the long-term water use efficiency report, which is entitled Making Water Conservation a California Way of Life. And as the board may recall, this was in response to a previous executive order that he had put in place in May of 2016, really directing the development of long-term water use efficiency improvements throughout the state of California. So he had 4 areas that he focused on, which are listed on the slide above. And a couple things that are in that report. One is directing that there be new water use efficiency targets that are again based on that budget-based approach with an indoor standard and outdoor standard, CII performance measures, which is commercial, industrial, institutional, and then elimination or reduction of water loss. That particular requirement is suggesting that a provisional target be set in 2021 and then a final target be in place in 2025. In order for that to go into effect, legislation will be needed to make that one occur. He's also directing permanent monthly reporting as well as permanent prohibitions on water waste, and it appears that both of those will happen through some type of rulemaking process at the State Water Resources Control Board, so we'll be following that closely. He's also directing that the Water Board develop performance standards for water system audits by 2020. Currently, there's legislation in place, it's called SB 555, which requires, starting in 2017, October of this year, that water agencies need to do a water system audit annually and turn those results into the Department of Water Resources. So it's using that sort of as a starting place and then actually directing the State Water Board to develop performance standards on top of that. And then last, that really affects us because there is a piece that's about ag, which really doesn't have anything to do with us, so I wasn't bringing that part up. But the last piece that really affects us is directing some changes to the urban water shortage contingency plans, in particular doing a 5-year, multi-year, multi-dry year analysis instead of just a 3-year. And then having more specific criteria for the shortage plans, in particular directing that there be 6 specific shortage stages regardless of local conditions. So as we've kept the board up to date over the last year or so that we've been working and following and participating in the stakeholder groups on this, there are still a number of concerns that we had submitted a letter on as the City of Santa Rosa. We also had signed on with a letter of over 100 water agencies. None of those concerns were addressed in the final report, so there's really still some concerns about not taking into consideration local conditions, specifically with the target setting. Currently, we do have in the 20 by 2020 the flexibility to use a couple different methods for setting the target. In the report and the recommended legislation that the governor is pushing, it only allows for one, which is very resource intensive, and it's the water budget approach. In addition, it doesn't deal with recycled water in a way that we would prefer. It doesn't count recycled water as a conservation benefit. And then also really is very specific on the shortage plans, again, not really allowing local conditions to be considered. For example, we have 7 stages, and that works really well for us, and that's based on a number of lessons learned and shortages we've gone through. But yet, if this goes into effect, we'd actually have to fit in their box of 6 specific stages. So again, just some concerns, things that we're continuing to follow. In particular, there is state legislation, and we had provided a quick update at the last BPU meeting under director's report. 2 bills that are moving through the legislation. They're AB 1654 and 968 by Assemblymember Rubio, that do take into account all the concerns that water agencies had and are promoting the sort of solutions and recommendations for an alternate approach to implement this report. So we're continuing to follow this, and we'll continue to follow the legislation. And sorry, the computer is doing something weird. Okay. So that's what's going on in terms of the new report and the emergency drought being over. So good news on that end. Wanted to make sure that the board was aware that this is May, which is Water Awareness Month, and it's our big celebration of a number of things. We did recognize at the City Council meeting on Tuesday our annual Water Use Efficiency Award winners, as well as the council adopted a proclamation declaring May as Water Awareness Month and encouraging everyone to use water efficiently. We will be at the Cinco de Mayo Festival tomorrow. We, again, will have the Eco Garden Tour coming up on May the 13th. If anyone's interested, they need to go register, but it's a free event. We'll be bringing the student poster contest winners, the 3rd and 4th grade winners, to the council on May 16th, and I'll also make sure and have those in my next water supply update so you can see all that great, exciting artwork. And then on May 31st at the Wednesday night market will actually be our Water Smart Expo, so we'll have more information on that at the next one as well, next board meeting. And then last, I just wanted to let the board know that we are really starting our outreach in relation to Water Smart and really focusing on outdoor. So our weekly watering recommendations are now up again on our website because now is the irrigation season, and we're really promoting information about Water Smart. So that's all I have for you, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Jennifer. Are there any board member questions? I just want to thank you for your update, and I look forward to seeing those the kids' posters again. I really enjoy them. Thank you.
They're great. Thank you.
Next item is public comments on non-agenda items, and I haven't received any cards, and I don't see anybody rise, so I'll move on. Are there any referrals? Assuming not. Written communication? I'll hand that over to the director.
We do have in the packet a quarterly CIP update that covers from January to March and would be able to respond to any questions if there are any on that item.
Are there any questions on the update? Subcommittee reports. Board Member Watts.
The subcommittee on water use efficiency met last week, I believe it was, and I think Deputy Director Burke covered a lot of what we discussed at that meeting, but I just wanted to acknowledge the 4 recipients that were recognized at council on Tuesday. We had 2 residential recipients. One was Lynn McClear, saving 28,000 gallons per year, which was a 29% reduction. And then the other residential one was Glen Green HOA, which saved 237 gallons compared to the previous year, which is a 19% reduction. And then 2 commercial, which was Hapid LLC, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but they saved over 50 gallons per year. And this actually had some effect on some people who rent space from them in the Sonoma County Ag and Open Space District, scheduled a Water Smart checkup. So that was actually a very cool way to acknowledge that there's multiple parties in that one that's saving water. And then the rescue mission, which took advantage of the toilet exchange program and are now saving 47 gallons per month. 47,000 gallons, sorry, yes, per month, which is a 34% reduction. And the other two updates that we have was the Efficient Fixtures Direct Install Program. Due to some coming under budget, they were actually able to add 750 toilet packages, so that's going to be installed. And two new plumbing companies, Southwest Environmental and Roto-Rooter, are going to be focusing on those, as well as the pre-rinse spray valves. And then we also have the Sustainable Garden has been opened. I think that we probably all saw the fences were down today. And the official ribbon cutting will be on June 20th at 10 a.m. So if any board members can attend, and feel free to go out and look at the garden.
Thank you. Are there any board member reports? Director's report.
Thank you. I have a few items to run through, informational. The first item is to share, even though stormwater and creeks, the department's activities aren't directly in the purview of the board. There's certainly a lot of very related issues that have nexus with water quality. We wanted to just briefly share the activities, and this is a time of year as the rains subside that we typically get issues along the creeks, which is largely camping and encampments along the creeks and quite a bit of trash that builds up, part of a broader citywide homeless issue and the like. But from a water quality standpoint, we're very active working with our Stormwater and Creeks program, police, TPW, to do cleanups. For the month of April, as an example, a total of 60 cubic yards of trash were picked up from a number of sites, and 7 active sites and 41 abandoned. So quite a number. In the type materials, 46 syringes, 95 batteries, 13 tires, and a lot of debris. So this is just an ongoing activity and really part of the broader city challenge is dealing with these sort of issues. As you all may know, as part of our stormwater permit, we do have fairly aggressive requirements for trash reduction in the creek. So that's really part of water's role to help address that issue. We found through studies that really the dominant amount of trash in the creeks that find their way to the laguna and the river do come from these encampments. We've, as all of you know, we've nearly completed our one-on-one with the council and board member meetings on the budget, and I hope that's adding value. We appreciate, you're busy and this is one more meeting, but it has seemed to me like a nice opportunity to go through and provide some contextual information for the council members as they begin to review the citywide budget and our portion of that. What we have spent at those meetings a bit of time on what we've talked a little bit about here of drawing down reserves and over time ensuring that we have a safe landing on that issue and don't dip too far down and beyond our target reserves. And as a board, you'll be hearing certainly more of that over the next year of different approaches and for staff to get some feedback. Moving on, every year, as many of you know, all public water systems are required to report to the State Department of Drinking Water over the past year, in this case 2016. And it's a pretty comprehensive report that talks about everything from the system generally, updating contact information, changes to the system, water quality. It's submitted and there's a review process, so it has been reviewed and accepted by the department. So now we'll be providing the formal final report and you all will be getting a copy of that this month. a legislative update item, and related in a bit to the first item of stormwater, where we've drafted a letter for the mayor to support, assuming that the council is supportive, on a SB 231 Hertzberg, which is redefining in the Prop 218 legislation what sewer is, to bring in the storm drain system into that would allow communities and jurisdictions such as ours to have a similar approach to storm drain in terms of rate setting that we have with water and sewer. Essentially, it's the more exception approach based on voters than a direct majority vote that would assist all jurisdictions on maintaining and investing in that pretty significant piece of infrastructure that we all have, and certainly help us, everyone, but us certainly in terms of the emerging and growing water quality regulations on our stormwater discharge. So we want to actively support that. There's been a number of efforts over the years. It hasn't been successful, and like most legislative initiatives, there's two sides to this, and there is an active side that is not supporting it based on all rate and similar increases should go through the direct public voting process. We'll see how that goes, and we'll keep you updated. As I believe you all received an email, the council did unanimously approve our participation in the Groundwater Sustainability Agency, a new JPA we're forming in our basin with our city, Cotati, Windsor, Runner Park, the county, the water agency, Sonoma RCD, and Goldridge RCD. As you saw in the email, Sebastopol decided not to join at this point in time, largely because they're just a very small piece of the basin and their wells are not in our basin. So it was a nice discussion by council with a lot of very positive words from staff in developing it, notably Deputy Director Burke, that really championed the effort, not just for the city, but really for the entire region. And I've gotten a tremendous amount of positive feedback, so thank you for those efforts. Staff is continuing to work on the emergency groundwater program, and we've brought that to the board in the past, and we'll be doing so certainly coming up. This is the desire by the city, by the council, to ensure that the city, in the case of emergencies or catastrophic events, that we have sufficient water to meet life safety issues. You know, the example would be dialysis centers, hospitals, schools, that sort of thing, a very minimum amount relative to our demand in the 7 to 10 MGD range. Finding these sites that not only are available to purchase, but also have sufficient groundwater is an ongoing effort and challenge, but we're making some pretty good efforts. Most recently, for example, in fact, last night, there was a public meeting at Whitehead Elementary School, and this is a potential location for a well where the community had some concerns, and maybe there still are some residual concerns on, many of them are on groundwater, and is this going to take their groundwater, draw it down? And as I understand it, staff did a good job explaining this is only in the case of extreme emergencies, and it's very limited the times we would operate it, so we think we made headway in addressing those concerns. You all are probably aware that this department takes a lead in a very admirable way of putting on the city's Earth Day event. And April 22nd, we had our largest event ever based on number of people, perhaps augmented by the Science March, but it may have turned into a nice synergy there. we handed out, just an example, over 1,500 bottles, so a lot of interest at our booths where we shared information. So kudos to the staff that spent all the effort on that. We also, of course, the city and Santa Rosa Water had a piece of the ribbon cutting at the courthouse square this past weekend that seemed to be very successful. In that we gave out 500 water bottles of Take It to the Tap, and they were filled right next to where we had the bottles, where we have water hydration stations built into the square. That seems to be well received, and hopefully won't turn into a full-fledged bathing station, but used for that purpose. Ongoing discussion how to refine that, but it seems like a nice move. And then lastly, at Monday's WAC and TAC meeting, the TAC appointed a new chair and vice chair. The chair is Drew McIntyre from North Marin Water District, and I was appointed as vice chair, so the work from that group will continue. That's my report.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the board members? Seeing none, thank you. And I guess that brings us to the adjournment of the meeting. Thank you, everybody.